We can just...
I love how that's face. You don't have to. Okay.
Well, welcome back everybody to another episode of ZoomTube with VetMedkid. Today I'm lucky enough to have Moriah from Thatvetlifepodcast. How are you, Moriah?
I am doing just dandy. It is pretty awesome to be here, Leanne. And we're talking across how many different time zones right now, and wonderful technology that it is.
Tell me about it. Gosh, those time zones just get me literally every single time, hey? So Moriah, would you like to tell me a little bit about you?
Yeah, so my name is Moriah, and as of middle May, I will be Dr. Moriah, so Friday. And for the last 4 years, I've been studying at the University of Edinburgh's, the Royal Dick School of Veterinary Studies in Edinburgh, Scotland. And it's crazy that is where, that part of my life is coming to an end. It was one of those things where you feel like vet school is just going to go on forever. And then suddenly you're like, here's your graduation diploma. And you're like, wait, what?
How did this happen?
What's going on here? Well, I have to be a doctor now? What? No, I'm super excited for it. But outside of vet school, I have my own podcast, which is called Thatvetlifepodcast. And it's been running for a little over 2 years. I don't know the numbers exactly, but it's been really, really fun to do that and just kind of get to meet people from all over the world. It's been crazy, the number of people that I've met. Yeah, and just it shows me how much I absolutely love this profession, because everybody that I talk to, and I'm sure you have a similar experience where everyone's just like, yeah, I'm willing to talk. Yeah, I'm willing to share my experience. Yeah, I'm willing to help the next generation of vets. So that's been kind of my experience. And yes, I'm graduating pretty soon. Depending on when this video comes out, I may have already graduated, crazy. And I'll be going into small animal medicine.
Wow, okay. So just to kind of backtrack a little bit, you studied in Scotland, but clearly your accent is not Scottish. Would you like
Something doesn't compute here.
What?
Yeah, so so I'm from what am I saying? I am from the United States, and I just decided that vet school, I didn't know where I wanted to go per se. I had a family trip to Scotland before, and I just knew I needed to get back there. I just felt that in my heart, I can't explain it any other way. So when the opportunity arose for me to actually study in Scotland, I was like, I'm going to take that as an open door, and away I went.
That's exciting. That's actually a really cool way, a cool pathway to have gone down. Are there many American students studying there?
There's actually quite a few. Our school is split up a little bit differently than, say, a school in the US, because there's a 4-year and a 5-year program. The 4-year program are for students who have done a previous degree. It's called the Graduate Entry Program, GEP, or JEP, as we call ourselves. And then there is the 5-year program, where it's probably similar to what you're used to, where kids can come straight out of high school and they do 5 years of veterinary study, and then we all graduate at the end as veterinarians. But to answer your question about the number of students, yeah, a fair number, especially in my program, the GEP program, were Americans or from Canada, just because that's it. Over here, it's normal to do a 4-year degree before you go to vet school. So yeah, and then in the actual 5-year program, there were actually not quite a few, but there was a fair number, I would say, of North Americans in that class.
Right.
So it worked out pretty evenly. There wasn't even, there was a lot more North Americans in the GEP program than there were in the 5-year program, but I didn't feel like an outsider at all. We all got along really, really well, and everyone was just kind of like, oh, that's what it is. There's quite a mix of people. There were very few people from Scotland, actually, at the school, ironically.
Right.
Most of them were from down near London, a few from Europe, and then we actually have an exchange program with Hong Kong University. So there's actually quite an array of students.
Yeah, that's very diverse.
It was really cool.
Yeah, definitely. So do you plan on moving back to America to work then?
I do. And at this point, with everything that's kind of changed, I am basically permanently back here in the States, and I'm looking at some jobs already. So it's exciting.
Yeah, that's big. Okay, so as you say, everything's changed because we're living in a COVID world at the moment. What does that mean for your graduation?
So from a graduation, the actual ceremony is canceled. Our original graduation date was supposed to be in July. That's been moved to May just because of the fact that we don't really have on-site rotations anymore. So we're doing a lot of virtual rotations and any kind of other CE or CPD, depending on what you call it in your country. But continuing education courses to just kind of keep us like with our fresh knowledge, if you could. And yeah, so graduation has changed. They're going to try and do a virtual ceremony, it sounds like, but it's not anything that's like we're missing the pomp and circumstance of a real graduation. Like we're not graduating in McEwen Hall, which is this big, glorious building with the robes and getting bopped on the head. Like that's a thing when you graduate here. So I'll be missing out on that, but in the grand scheme of things, this is something that in the very beginning, I was like, what? No graduation? This is like a big deal. And then I just kind of sat with it for a little bit and I went, you know what? Had my pity party. It's one day. I haven't been preparing these 4 years for that one day. I've been preparing for the eternity after that. So the fact that I don't have a graduation, yeah, it stinks, but it's okay in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. That's actually a really great outlook to hear and to, I guess, think about, and for others to realize as well. Because I guess also, I mean, obviously you want to celebrate with all your friends and everything on the day, but those people, you've gone through vet school with them. There's no way that they're not going to be lifelong friends.
Yeah.
So you can still celebrate so many different other life achievements and stuff. So
yeah.
As you mentioned before, you have a podcast, which you've been doing for about 2 years. How did that all start?
So that was, oh gosh, how did the podcast start? I mean, you think that I would remember my kind of like podcast evolution story, but it was something that like I've always been really interested in media and figuring out like video and audio stuff. And I just didn't know what I wanted to do with it per se. So I started by doing like videos and like YouTube videos. And I was like, this is pretty cool. I'll do interviews. I'll record it. I'll edit it. It'll be really awesome. It was too much work. But with everything that was going on at school, I was involved with so many things. I was like, this is just not working. What can I do here? And as it turned out, there was a scholarship or grant going through the school for this like student staff, I don't know how to describe it per se, like collaboration grant. And so I looked at it and said, I wonder if I wanted to start a podcast, if I could apply for this grant, if I would fit what they're looking for. And as it turned out, it was. And so I was able to use this grant money to actually like start this podcast. Because it was all started with this idea that I've been learning so much from amazing vet students and veterinarians just so far in my education. And I wanted to be able to take what I had learned and relay that to other people, because I was like, I shouldn't just keep this to myself. This is too amazing. So that's what I wanted to do. And I was like, you know what? I think this could work. And like the 3 things behind it was I wanted to highlight the people and experiences that inspired, encouraged, and challenged the veterinary profession. Like that was the skeleton from which that Vet Life podcast was developed from. And I very much didn't want it to be about like me and what was going on with me, because I just feel kind of like weird doing that kind of stuff, being like, look at what I'm doing.
Yes.
Like, it feels weird. And whenever I post something like that, I'm like, not for me.
Yeah.
And so that's where it all kind of developed from. And from there, I was like, well, I guess I can. Like I tried originally to take the audio and then upload it to YouTube to kind of span different parts of social media. It's too much work. So even starting a Facebook was like, oh. So I kept with Instagram. I was like, I can dive into this. And so I was able to do the podcast. I have a fantastic platform, which if anybody is looking to start a podcast, I highly recommend anchor.fm.com. And like it's a free podcasting platform. You can record through it, you can edit on it, you can distribute. It goes to like 10 plus different platforms. Amazing for anybody who wants to start. Highly recommend it.
Awesome.
And so that's what I've been using. And from there, like it has just grown like crazy. The number of people that I've gotten to meet, and like you yourself, and just It is absolutely incredible. This whole community of veterinarians that we have is just mind-blowing. And
about it.
I'm excited to see how it continues to grow as I leave the vet student phase of my life and go into the veterinarian phase. So it's had a little bit of a revamp in the past quarantine time, essentially. I was like, I'm going to take this time and I'm going to do what I've always wanted to do, which was revamp the podcast. So instead of just being people telling their stories, I wanted to kind of dive down into more of a niche. And I'm focusing on the actual process of storytelling and the role that it has within veterinary medicine. So it has a little bit of a range, even though it's pretty niche, where I have some episodes where it talks about like digital storytelling and the importance of storytelling and those kind of areas. But then I have some very targeted episodes where I'm actually looking at like almost like client communication, but we're looking at it through the lens of storytelling. So I have a couple episodes where I actually talk with veterinarians about, okay, so this is the first time you're meeting a new client. What are the kind of things that you need to say? What is your body language telling? Those sorts of things. And we look at different areas. So the one I've recorded thus far has been like coming into the exam room for the first time, meeting them for the first time. So it's like, what do you need to look up beforehand? What do you need to do when you enter the room? We talk about different scenarios of like, oh, do you shake, like non-COVID world, do you shake a hand? Do you not shake a hand? Do you say hi to the owner, the pet? Where do you stand? What do you do? Like those sorts of things, not to give people a stepwise process of this is how you do it, but to give vet students and new grads like myself kind of building blocks from which to work off of, because everyone's going to like develop their own voice. Like everybody has a story to tell. You're going to tell your story very differently than how I will tell my own story. So developing that voice is so important, and I want to be able to provide the building blocks from which you do that.
That's so cool. Like, wow. Because like you say, like you've been able to meet so many different people from all around the world, and each of those people have had a different, their building blocks have been different to what ours are going to be like. And so when you can hear from so many different people, you can be like, oh, I like the way they did that, and you can take that from that person and that from another person and make your own story. And that's such a cool thing to be able to give to other people and share. It's amazing. Where can people listen to your podcasts?
So you can listen to the podcast wherever you find podcasts. So I'm on Spotify, I am on Google, I'm on iTunes, Stitcher, Castbox, Podbean. I lose track of how many I'm on. But if you are someone who listens to podcasts and you have a platform you're used to, look at it through there. You'll pretty much find me by typing in That Life Podcast. Additionally, I am on Facebook and Instagram under the same name of That Life Podcast.
Amazing. Just everywhere. I love it.
Everywhere. Woo.
Okay, so obviously vet life is a huge part of your life and these podcasts and everything. But what other hobbies do you have?
Too many, probably. So things that I like to do outside of vet school is, like right now I'm getting really back into my running, which final year of vet school, I put it to the wayside and I felt the effects of that. So right now I'm really enjoying getting back into doing like physical activity, just being outside. I love making music. I love singing, doing that kind of thing. Spending time with people outside of veterinary medicine is always really good. While I was in vet school, I got involved in a vaulting ministry, which worked with at-risk youth and vaulting horses. So that was really interesting. But that was just a big part of my life as well. So I have a smattering of different things here and there, and it kind of grows every day and depends on what day, if I'll like focus on this area of my hobbies or this area. But
that's cool. So with your running, I know that you kind of got a lot of people involved in that, myself included. I am not a runner. I actually quite hate running. But you made a fun event called the Great Quarantine Marathon, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Would you like to talk a little bit about where that idea came from?
So first off, thank you for taking part, even though you hate running. I loved your videos, like parkour through the night. I was like, oh my gosh, this girl's a daredevil. But so the Great Quarantine Marathon was something that was kind of born out of probably a day that I had too much caffeine. So I knew that like I loved running. There were a number of other people that also like running or cycling or just getting outside. And I was like, that's something that, granted, a lot of people maybe don't have that option right now because of quarantine and everything that's going on. But the vast majority of us do have the ability to go outside for an hour. And it's like, what can you do with that? And so I was like, what if we ran a marathon like across the world with different veterinarians and different vet students? I was like, do you think we could do this? And when I put it out there, I was like, we'll get a couple people, maybe. Okay. But no, we had like, what, 11, 12 of us running this marathon. Yeah. And it was to the point where I was like, okay, forget the 26.2 miles. Let's just see how far we can go. And we ended up doing like, what, over 70 miles?
Far out. That was intense.
It was crazy, absolutely crazy. But it kind of centered around this idea of maintaining a healthy lifestyle despite what was going on. And also looking at the parallels of running a marathon. Like, that's a marathon. It's a long distance. You have to pace yourself. You can't really, like, sure, people can run a marathon by themselves, but in the grand scheme of things, long distance stuff requires a team. It requires a community. And just like this whole surviving and weathering this virus, like, we need our community in order to continue to support each other. So I was looking at that kind of parallel when I came up with this, and like, I put the idea out there into the Vetstagram community, and it just blossomed from there, which is exactly what I wanted it to happen. And it's now to the point where we had so many people kind of being like, hey, can I take part? And I had to, unfortunately and painfully, say, sorry, like, we're full at this time, but we're gonna have to do it again because so many people were interested.
I totally agree, and I'll jump on board that again. Like I say, I actually thoroughly enjoyed it once I got out there, and it achieved the goals of getting, like, I actually went outside and did some fitness, so it was good. I can recommend it. I love it.
So much fun.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I have thoroughly enjoyed getting to know more about you and the podcast. But I do have one final question for you.
Okay.
If you weren't a vet, what do you think you'd be?
Let's see. There's a couple things, but for today, I'll go with someone who's probably invested in media and marketing. And I say that because I, like, as much as veterinary medicine is dealing with animals, so much of it is communicating with people and getting to know them and getting to hear their stories. And so that would be a way for me to continue to do that, even if I wasn't a veterinarian.
Definitely. I think you'd be very well suited to that. And look, you kind of mushed it all together anyway, so works out. Awesome. Well, thanks again, and I hope everybody back home enjoyed this episode of ZoomTube with VetMedKid. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can catch the next few episodes coming up. We definitely have a lot of cool people throughout the world coming in to chat to you. Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye, guys.